across to that developments, and 11 members of parliament have been suspended from Rajya Sabha. Yesterday, you'd remember, 4 Congress MPs were suspended by the Lok Sabha Speaker, citing misconduct, and today, 11 more members of parliament have been suspended from the Rajya Sabha. That's the big news which is coming in. What are the grounds? Why did this happen? Pallavi will tell us more about this. Pallavi, over to you. What are the details? Am I audible to you, Pallavi?
Yes, if you could repeat the question.
Pallavi, 11 MPs have been suspended. What is the reason this time?
Well, the same. I mean, the rule book, of course, says that you cannot have unruly behavior, cannot come to a well of the house, cannot carry your posters. But exactly on those grounds, the action has been taken against these 11 MPs. A couple of names, of course, began to come out, but Sushmita Dev is certainly one of them. You remember there's been a notice which has been given by both almost every political party in the opposition spectrum. They wanted a debate and discussion on the GST issue, on the price rise issue. But the House says that there's a list of business. There's a business advisory council which has to decide on how it has to be discussed and what's the time slot. Opposition, of course, his allegation is that this is just a dodging tactic by the government. They don't want people's issues to be discussed, so there has been hangama and the House was adjourned and they came to a well of the House, to which the objection has been raised by the chairperson.
Pallavi, I'm just getting some names as you're pointing out that there's Sushmita Dev, you have Shantanu Sen, you also have A. Rahim, Dola Sen. These are the members of parliament who have been suspended, and the opposition continues to say that this is a misuse of the rule book, while the chair has cited a need for decorum and discipline within the House.
Yes, and in fact, if you go by the rule book of the parliament, ever since the parliament came into existence, there are some strict do's and don'ts, which are usually never followed. For example, you cannot have demonstrations outside the Mahatma Gandhi statue within the premises of the parliament. You cannot go rush to the well of the House. You cannot show newspaper clippings. Usually that has never been followed. But as I said, it's totally, completely to the discretion of the Speaker and the Chairperson if they want to take an action against the MPs. If you remember, in the last session also, almost more than 20 opposition MPs were suspended for the entire session on the grounds that it was of unruly behavior. That same yardstick has now been applied to them as well.
Yesterday, when we spoke to multiple people, including, Manikam Tagore, about why the suspension or why they were protesting, they said they wanted a debate on price rise, GST and various other issues plaguing a common person. Was that the, repeated demand of the opposition MPs again?
Oh, yes. In fact, notices have been given by the Aam Aadmi Party, by the TMC, by the Congress Party. They want a debate and discussion on the price rise, as also on the GST issue. All that the government was saying is that let Birla get well, come back to Parliament because she's suffering from COVID, and then the government will slot it. But clearly there's a lack of communication between both the sides, which has resulted in what we've seen today.
How this is likely to play out, Pallavi? So many suspensions, and you pointed out it happened in the last session as well. How do you see the opposition taking this?
Well, I mean, pretty much the same argument which has been given by the Congress Party when 4 of the MPs have been suspended in Lok Sabha. This government doesn't want to answer questions. And anyone who asks questions faces a political witch hunt, either that is by way of the investigative agencies being unleashed on them or they being actually chucked out of Parliament. In fact, it has been a common refrain of the opposition that their mics are switched off, television cameras don't focus on them when they're making a point because the government doesn't want them to be shown.
This is a suspension for the entire session or for 1 week? We are hearing that this action is under 256.
Yes, so it essentially means for the entire session. We'll still wait for some more clarity coming in on that. But the 4 MPs who were suspended yesterday have been suspended for the entire session. The session ends in the mid of August. So it's almost half the session is over. And the government's argument is that there are so many bills which were actually discussed during the Business Advisory Council. So it's not that the opposition was not on board. Why is it that they're deliberately creating an issue when the government is open to a debate and discussion? And they're MPs. People are watching them. They're responsible MPs, and they should follow the decorum, which has always been a part of the Parliament's rule book.
Cutting across to my colleague Arunima as well. She's with us on the broadcast. Arunima, what more details do you have?
So under Section 256, this is the section of parliamentary rules which governs the code of conduct of members of parliament. So the suspension order is being issued under this section. Sushmita Dev, Shantanu Sen, A. Rahim, M. Shamugam are some of the names which have been made to public. 11 MPs in total have been suspended. It was made very clear yesterday. The tone in a way was set when Lok Sabha Speaker took action. Rajya Sabha, we have seen suspensions happening earlier also. And acrimonious scenes came out of the upper house earlier also in previous sessions. This is in continuation of that. Opposition is also adamant. They're not going to backtrack. They'll continue to protest in the manner that they have been doing. Now, government also taking a very hardened position.
Pallavi also continues to be with us on the broadcast. So, Pallavi, 7 from the TMC, 2 from the DMK. Pallavi, if you're still with us on the show. We'll try and connect with Pallavi. Arunima is with us on the broadcast. Arunima, do we have a breakup of this suspended MP list? From which different parties do they hail from?
Yes, what we are being told, some of them are from TMC who have been suspended earlier too. Birla is one name which we have heard earlier also when previous rounds of suspension happened. So 7 members who are from the Trinamool Congress, 2 members are from the DMK. That's the information that we have at this stage. Total 11. So 7 plus 2 is 9. 2 more. We're still waiting to understand as to from which opposition party these 2 are. But essentially, it was TMC, DMK, Congress, and Aam Aadmi Party. These were the parties which were constantly giving notices and raising issues of importance that they thought the government must answer. Issues about price rise, issues about GST, issues about misuse of central agencies. And because they were given repeated warnings and they did not heed to it, Rajya Sabha chair has taken this action.
Looking at the coverage and reportage that you and Pallavi have been getting as Arunima from different sessions of the parliament, even in the last session, there were a spate of suspensions that had happened. It seems to have become a norm. And the argument of the government is, and the argument of the chair is, that there is huge disruption in the House. We're not able to function. And that is why we have to take these measures.
Yes, sir. If you recall, just ahead of the monsoon session itself, opposition had taken objection to a government notification, to a parliament notification, which said that the rules are very clear about protests and disruptions are not allowed. And to that, opposition said this was an attempt to muzzle, to which the parliament countered, the parliament secretariat countered, saying this is a routine, bulletin that is issued year after year, session after session. But in a sense, it was made clear that even though parliament secretariat is calling this routine, this in any way underlines what the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha chair were thinking. And that thinking was made clear yesterday when Birla, just before suspension, just before the adjournment happened, said that if you want to show these posters and banners, please do it outside the House at 3 o'clock. The MPs did not agree and the suspension happened. So the tone in a way was set. Today a repeat happened in Rajya Sabha also. Since morning there were repeated adjournments, and finally when the opposition continued to protest, continued to make an attempt to reach the well of the House, the chair took this decision that they will be suspended. And like I said, this is not the first time this is happening, especially for Trinamool Congress, it's deja vu.
Please stay with us on the broadcast, Arunima. I'll keep coming back to you. Gaurav Bhatia of the BJP is also joining us on the broadcast. Good afternoon, Mr. Bhatia. Thank you so much for speaking to us. More suspensions coming in, this time from Rajya Sabha.
Parliament is the temple of democracy. It is a forum which should be used for deliberation, discussion, dissent. But there is no place for placards being shown. There is no place for indiscipline and anarchy. No place for throwing files at the chair, manhandling the marshals. And this has been the conduct of the opposition parties. Dola Sen, I heard in your report, has been suspended again. And if I remember correctly, even earlier, Dola Sen was suspended by the chair. So these people are habitual offenders and their arguments don't have any merit. Therefore, they resort to such means which needs to be condemned and deprecated.
Mr. Bhatia, the argument which is coming in from the opposition MPs, we had some of them last night on the broadcast as well, is that the action of the chair tantamount to silencing the opposition parties, and suspension is an extreme step that should not be taken. How do you respond to that?
We should never question the wisdom of the chair. There are rules in place and rules are followed. And I must say that these very MPs, when suspended in the past, were even justifying standing on the table. They were justifying throwing files at the chair, manhandling the marshals. So we do not expect that they would introspect and then, change their habits. Rather, they will keep on disturbing the House, which is meant for deliberation.